I've been working on a few big projects that have been hitting some frustrating roadblocks, and I needed a break. So I decided to stop and work on something simple for a little bit. Making YouTube videos means I spend a lot of time working from home, and especially using my computer. Researching, writing, editing, and even other things like playing games are just some of the activities I do here and take up the majority of my day. Staring at a monitor all day makes it really easy to miss how much time is passing by. Sure, I have clocks, but I'm not really paying attention to those when I get in a groove. Another problem I have is my desk being a bit dark because of the shelf I have over it. The contrast from my monitors to the dark area leads to some eye strain over the day. I've been putting a lamp behind to help with this, but I had another idea to solve both of these problems at once. By creating a color daylight simulator using inexpensive RGB light strips in a Raspberry Pi. Adding this has changed how I look at my desk for long use sessions and has made the experience working here much better than I thought it would. I'll admit, my use case here is somewhat niche, but there are other ways that this could be used, so I'm going to go over how this works and how you can make one yourself. The end result here is going to be a light controller that changes the color in a similar way to how the sun is colored by the atmosphere throughout the day. Everything that I'm going to be covering here is also available in a GitHub repository that I'll link in the description. It has a schematic for putting this together, as well as the software I created for this. Now, again, this is just the controller. The implementation of a particular style of light is going to be up to you in how you want to make it, but what I've put together will take care of the tedious steps of controlling it. Now, to start, when you buy a kit of RGB LEDs, you can get them with some kind of controller. There are a few different basic types of controller, and some of them allow you to configure them from an app with more advanced options. When I first had the idea for this project, I figured there must be something out there that could do what I wanted, or at least close. I had pretty low expectations for this setup at the beginning. I just wanted a light that would change color at different times of the day. Many of the RGB LED strip controllers advertise schedules, but everything I read made it look like they're only for turning the lights on and off, not changing the colors. But I couldn't really tell from the reviews or images. I had a couple of uses in mind for the light strips, so I went with a 32-foot kit with a full fancy remote and app-based controller on the off chance that no one else cared about color schedules and didn't think to mention it. But no. The app scheduling is only for turning it on and off, so it was on me to make what I wanted. I think this is an overall fairly representative RGB LED strip kit, and there are a few things that I want to mention about these before starting for anyone who may want to repeat this project. Firstly, it comes with these right angle joiners. Do not use these. This will fail, it's only a matter of when, and there are plenty of reviews out there talking about how these started smoking or catching fire, and that is what will happen when these contacts become loose and cause arcing. You should only use wire that is soldered to the contacts to join the strips, which ensures that you have a solid connection. And on a related note, this may be specific to my kit, but the connection to the controller is unsafe as well. The strips came with machined 100mm pitch connectors, which are actually better for high current connections, but one of the mating connectors on the controller doesn't fit right and the pins are extremely loose, creating another possible point for arcing. I don't have a solid recommendation for this problem if you need to use the controller, but if yours is like this, you may want to return it. Another issue, these lights are produced in sheets that are then cut into strips and soldered together, so there are solder joints quite frequently. You should really take a look at all of these for problems before you power the lights for the first time. This may also help you notice other production issues. This section of strip was offset slightly when cut and broke through the blue light trace. This caused it and all downstream lights to be missing the blue channel, and I had to remove this section. Essentially, all this boils down to keeping in mind that these are not a refined quality product, and you may need to re-engineer some things about them. Alright, now that we know that these are garbage and made sure that they won't catch fire, we can continue. Before I committed to making this a full project, I set up the lights draped behind my monitors and set up custom colors using the good side of my controller to the colors I had in mind for the daylight cycle. I used this for a couple of days while working on other projects and manually advanced the colors at different times of the day. I ended up really liking this and was increasingly motivated to make something automatic and more permanent. In the end, I decided I wanted a solution completely independent of a computer or other device, so I decided to use some kind of embedded system for it. I also wanted automatic time syncing, which meant I needed something with Wi-Fi. I actually have an embedded system clock that uses an 8051 to keep time, and it drifts badly, so I don't want to rely on anything like that to keep time over long periods. I was also given the idea to have the light accurately change with the local sunrise and sunset times throughout the year, and that is very possible, and not all that difficult to do. Although, for the moment, I'm not that interested in learning all the math to calculate the position of the sun myself. But more importantly, for a released project like this, it would need to be able to handle different locations and time zones, which would be a lot of extra monotonous work. So I looked up what libraries already exist for this, and Astral for Python seemed like an ideal choice after reading over the docs. With that, the best choice for the project was pretty clear, and I settled on using a Raspberry Pi for this. I planned on using a 0W, but the two I had both ended up having bad Wi-Fi radios for some reason, so I went forward with an overkill 3B for now. Anyone following along with this could easily use a working 0W instead. Next, we have to control the lights, and thankfully driving the LEDs is easy. These strips are standardized to common anode with 3 elements in series with current limiting resistors included. The forward voltage of the LEDs is going to be around 3 volts each, and a 12 volt power supply is what was meant to power them. We'll need to be able to control the 12 volt power source with the Pi to control the lights, so we need some kind of driver to interface with. I'm far from the first person to want to connect RGB strips to a Pi, and the generally accepted way seems to be to use TIP 120s. They are a Darlington transistor pack, which gives them an excellent current throughput capacity, and being NPN BJT makes them well suited to the low side driving that we need to do. Also, being Darlington, they have a very high current gain, meaning we don't need a lot of current to activate them. So now we have a basic idea of how to control the lights. If we throw in a power connector and pick some GPIO on the Pi, we have a schematic of what you need to make. We should also add some 1K resistors between the GPIO and the base on the transistor to limit the current from the Pi. Assembly really isn't that difficult. Let's walk through the process on a breadboard with a small strip. You don't want to do this with a lot of lights because breadboards don't do well with high current. You need to connect the base of the transistor, which is the left pin, to the GPIO on the Pi. Make sure to have the resistor in between. The emitters, the right pin, all get grounded, and the collectors, the center pin, are connected to the LED strip's color connections. And that's the basic setup of the circuit. Using the Pi, we can confirm all of the lights can be controlled. For a final version, you'll again want to solder this together on a PCB instead of a breadboard, but this is how it needs to be laid out. To set up the daylight control of the lights, you're not going to need to do much. I've written a program that can do this already and is up on GitHub. Start off by preparing your PiOS SD card however you prefer. Using the flashing tool and loading Raspbian will work just fine. Go through the basic setup steps after that to get it working. I recommend setting it to automatically log in to make it easier to auto-run the program on PowerUp later. To use my Daylight controller software, you'll need to install 2 dependencies. Astral, which can be done with pip, and the slightly more complicated step of installing PyBlaster by following their compilation instructions. PyBlaster is a GPIO interface program that uses hardware-level PWM on the Pi, which means the OS won't get in the way. There isn't anything you need to configure with either of those once they're installed. My software can be cloned from the Git repository and then run to generate an initial configuration file. This is where all of the settings you may want and need to change are stored. The GitHub page goes into further detail on them all, but I'll briefly cover some of the basics here. First, you'll need to make sure your GPIO pin numbers are correct for how you built your driver interface. Next, to get the correct times for where you are, you need to determine your time zone and provide a latitude and longitude. I highly recommend using the location of a nearby airport for checking against known values and for security reasons. There's some other things you can personalize, but we'll come back to those after the next section. And just a note, if something isn't working after changing a setting, you can delete that one setting or the whole file, and it will automatically be created again with the default value on the next program launch. With that taken care of, you're now ready to build an artificial daylight source. You could put this up anywhere. My use case was, again, putting lights on my monitors, but you could easily use this to make a fake window. Putting up a curtain rod and putting lights that point out from the sides would be a very easy and convincing way to achieve this. To demonstrate this idea, though, I pulled down a set of window blinds, which you can get for about $20 to $40, and create a cool effect with. And since I pulled these off a window, I'm just going to do a temporary setup on the back of a sliding door. For the blinds, you're going to want to try and create as even and smooth of an effect as possible. I'm putting the lights on a piece of dollar store foam board that I can hang behind them. I'm putting them on perpendicular to the surface and up against each other so that they will illuminate the white as much and as thin as possible. Then I can hang the whole thing up. Before I hang the blinds over them though, I'm going to attach a thin white sheet to act as a diffuser, and once it's hung up, we can see how it looks, and I think that looks pretty darn good. Now, again, this is just a temporary demonstration. I would probably want to add more lights to this if I were doing it for real, but this is also a pretty big 3-foot wide set of blinds. This is something that you could easily customize and play around with to get the ideal results for how you want to make it. Now that we have something set up, let's take a look at the other options we have to configure with the software. There are 3 options that change the output of the light. The intensity is fairly obvious, as it just changes how bright the lights are overall. The white balance is something that you're going to need to tune for your lights. These LED strips don't match any kind of color standard out of the box, and having all the elements fully on probably isn't going to look completely white. Using this setting will allow you to customize the maximum brightness for each color to make sure that when it is set to white, they're all even. This is definitely something you're going to have to tune for your particular setup. Now, to test this, you can run the program with a test color option and specify noon, which is pure white by default. The last setting are all the colors the lights cycle through. The software will slowly blend through different colors throughout the day to create the daylight effect. There are different colors for dawn, sunrise, noon, sunset, and dusk, as well as night. There are currently 2 night colors for programming purposes right now. They should both be set to the same color though, due to a bug that won't blend them correctly. I'll fix that later. These colors default to more subtle realistic values to make the light seem more real, but you can change them to anything you want. So if you want a green sunrise and a magenta sunset, you can go right ahead and do that. For my use, I'm using slightly more saturated colors for the different times of the day to make the daylight change more obvious. So I like having this be easy to change. You can easily test all of the colors by running the program with the test option, which will rapidly cycle through the entire daylight routine. Once you're happy with it, you can make the program auto-start on login with the Pi user by adding it to the bash RC file in the home folder. Do make sure you change the user password if it's network connected before you leave it running though. Well, that pretty much wraps this up. I couldn't really find any other projects trying to do this online, but based on the reactions I got after posting about my setup on Twitter and other places, I suspect there are going to be a number of people who like this idea. If you do build one of these, I would be fascinated to see how you did it if you want to tag me on Twitter with pictures. This isn't the normal kind of video I make, but I really needed a break from some of my other projects that were going awry, and this has been kicking around the back of my head for a while. But I hope you enjoyed this, and if you want to support the channel, I am on Patreon. But that's it for now, and I'll see you next time.